can hear us, and then we will start. Can you hear there all right, Mac?
Yeah, everything's fine. I'll just switch the camera on in a bit.
That's no problem. Shall we quickly do a run round of the co-authors so you can know who on the call is a co-author and a little bit about themselves? So I might just pick on you in the nicest possible way, so that you have an opportunity just to say who you are. So I'm going to go to Winnie first because you're smiling at me. So I think that means you're ready.
Hi, everybody. My name is Winnie Henry, and I came to be involved with the book through being a carer for my husband, Willie, who had vascular dementia. I found that I wasn't getting any answers anywhere, so joined up with Partners in Research a long time ago, looking for answers. And it wasn't until Rosie came along that I started to find like-minded people, and we haven't stopped.
We haven't, I'm sure. See, it's a good thing that we haven't stopped, right? We're nice and busy. Chris, I'll come to you next if that's okay.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for inviting us to come along and chat to you. My name is Chris Maddox. I'm a person living with dementia, and I was first diagnosed in 2016 with vascular dementia. Then I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and in 2020 I was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. It's just really nice to get our voices heard and for people to hear the things that we want to say and the things that affect us. Because I've been told on numerous occasions there's nothing like learning from the people with lived experience. So I hope you'll enjoy the session. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris. Willie, I'll come to you next.
So my name's Willie Gilder. I'm age 71. I live in Edinburgh. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. It's a form of Alzheimer's which affects my parietal lobes rather than my hippocampus. So my memory is not particularly affected, but my eyesight and sense of balance and various other things are. And I'm just passionate about spreading the word about different aspects of dementia, really.
Thank you, Willie. Martin, I'll come to you.
Hi, I'm Martin Robertson, live all the way up above Aberdeen, diagnosed with posterior cortical atrophy in 2016, and I call research catnip to the brain because I've been told I would be in care without it, so let's carry on.
I think we might need to trademark that phrase for you there, Martin. But I think we all know it's yours at this point. David, I'll come to you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's David Ross. I'm a retired engineer, and I was a carer for my late wife for a few years. And like Winnie, I wasn't getting answers. I wasn't getting anywhere. And again, until Rosie came along, and I found a platform to express my frustrations and to get involved in research.
Thank you, David. And last but not least, we've got Mac on the call.
Thank you very much. And nice to see some new faces. I've been this quite some time, diagnosed back in 2010, and the diagnosis was accidental. I didn't have any symptoms. I had major heart surgery, and apparently after the heart surgery, they do a brain scan. I was out of it, so they did a brain scan, and then I had a visit from the consultant at home telling me that we've done something to this is working fine, but this isn't. So that's how I found out I had dementia.
Thank you, Mac. We also have a couple of other co-authors who are potentially joining us in the next wee while, but we'll crack on with some questions if that's okay. So I'm going to go to Jackie first because I know you had a question to start off with. And then what we'll do is whoever would like to give an answer, just pop your hand up and we'll come to you.
So first of all, congratulations on getting 10,000 downloads. That's absolutely phenomenal. One of the things, first of all, I better introduce myself. I'm Jackie Kerr. I'm now the Neuroprogressive and Dementia Network Manager. Been in post for about 6 months, but I have worked with the network for about 8 or 9 years now. and my inaugural first day joining the network was at the book launch. So the 1st of September was my actual first day. It was a really fabulous day to actually be there and be part of. And one of the roles I obviously also do is we go out and we speak to workers in Alzheimer's Scotland, dementia link workers, post-diagnostic link workers, and part of the process and the training programme is to give people the confidence to talk about research. And one of the main features is that we do is partners in research. And we have found we've now trained almost 190 people across Scotland. And partners in research is really one of the core things that they actually are really interested in. And since the launch of the book, we provide, we talk about the book as well, and we give them a link to the book. So, you know, they're really keen to be involved, and they're, you know, it's fantastic what you've all done. So what I would like to ask is, how did you find the experience of actually writing the book? So who's going to answer that huge question?
Who would like to come in on that one? David, on you go.
I didn't particularly find the process of writing it difficult. I think what we found difficult was the process of having it published. But the actual writing of the book was fairly straightforward. We have an experience. We want to get that experience out. We wrote it down, we edited it, we discussed it, whatever. It wasn't that difficult, but the process of having the book published was more difficult.
Thank you, David. And I think, Chris, sorry, you had your hand up there as well too. So I'll come to you and then to Martin, if that's okay. Oh, you're on mute just now though, Chris.
There's always one. I think Rosie did all the hard work because it was easy for us because we were just talking about our experiences. And it was Rosie that brought all of our experiences together to go into the book. And I think that you have to be in a safe place to be able to do something like writing a book. And we all felt safe and comfortable with one another. And of course, at first, we just thought anything we said was staying in the group. And then it appears in a book. But we did get to check it out and make sure everything that we said was okay to go in the book. So, yeah, we just did the talking, really. And Rosie did the writing.
Talking is what makes the book though, Chris, not my writing. I'll come to Martin and then Mac.
I was going to say most of that as well, but it was the fact that we were able to chat without thinking that we were dictating, if you like. Well, we weren't dictating a book, we were chatting about it. And it was a lot more natural. And the fact we all had empathy with each other, and especially with Rosie, because she also had to put up with all of us. But you do, yeah, for something like this, you need empathy between everyone.
Absolutely, Martin. Thank you. And Mac, we'll go to you before we do another question.
Thank you. Thank you. For me, the biggest thing and the most enjoyable was the fact that we discussed different stigmas attached to the condition. And we overcame them to a certain extent, and we did pretty well. And the other thing that helped us was the fact that, you know, talking to strangers is something that people living with dementia are not all that good with. I personally aren't. And because we were seeing the person on the screen, and then we had that sort of connection, that bond, and it was so strong that we were quite candid, open, and really intimate about some of the things that we actually talked about. And again, I echo what Chris has said, that it's important that you have the right platform and the right type of listening ears. That makes a difference. And that's what made it enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Myra, I just wanted to know if you'd like to introduce yourself as you've managed to join. Sorry, there's been problems with that. And then we can go to another question.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was late in joining, but I just couldn't get into it. I don't know what's happening with the internet, and I'll have to put my video off after this. I'm Myra Lamont, and I was a carer for my late husband who had semantic dementia. I've been around the dementia landscape for many years, actually as a campaigner, and now I think I'm an ambassador and working with this group to try and get improvements for people living with dementia and carers.
Thanks very much, Myra, and I hope your internet holds out for us. And thank you for joining.
So I'll just put my camera off if that's okay.
No problem at all. Right, so I will come to the group. Is there any questions you would like to ask? Otherwise, I have some questions here. If not, Leslie, on you go.
Hi, I'm Leslie Cousland. I work with Enrich Enabling Research in Care Homes. And I just wondered what the co-authors had hoped to achieve in writing this book, and do you think you've achieved that? Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Who would like to go first on that one? Oh, Mac, you're up. You're ready to go. I'll let you go first, Mac.
Yeah, thank you. I think the biggest challenge we had is that the word dementia is so broad, because dementia itself isn't a disease. It's a term that's used. And I think most people don't understand the fact that dementia isn't a disease, and it's a different type of dementias that brings different issues. And what we were trying to pass on, and I think we've done a good job, was to educate people, not just normal average people, but professionals as well. Because, you know, dementia, the minute you mention dementia, people automatically assume either it's old age or memory. And both are not facts, because memory is an issue, there's no doubt about that, but it isn't the issue. So we try to highlight the fact that, you know, there are different types of dementias and people have different issues. And I think reading the book and talking to people here, I think we've done that pretty well.
Thank you, Mac. David, did you want to come in there too?
Yeah, for me, it was about lack of awareness. I was completely unaware of any form of dementia, apart from the fact that my brother had vascular dementia and my sister ultimately had frontotemporal dementia. I knew nothing. All I realized was that my wife was having problems. I was having problems with her. And we didn't know. This went on for years until finally we got a diagnosis. And when we had the diagnosis, I asked the question, you know, why, how? Never received an answer. So I did my own research and found a lot of things out that no one was telling me about. And I didn't have a voice. I couldn't communicate. I couldn't get what I had found out there. And the only way to do that was to find a host. Unfortunately for Rosie, she was the host.
I loved it, so we're all good there. Winnie, would you like to add something in there too?
I would add to what everyone has said, that it was to bring awareness of what dementia is, and that it's not the end of life, that you can live well with dementia. I think that was the thing that I was trying to get across with the book.
Absolutely, thank you, Winnie. And then we've got Willie and then Martin, and then we'll come to Irina for the next question, if that's okay.
So I have Alzheimer's disease, and the one thing everybody knows about Alzheimer's disease is that it affects memory. My memory isn't affected because my form of Alzheimer's doesn't affect memory. It affects my eyesight, my sense of balance, and my working memory, but not my episodic memory. And I think one of the things that I am keen to say to people is dementia can be much more nuanced than people think it is. And it's not just as simple as saying, here is a group of people who have lost their memory. It is all kinds of different forms of symptoms that might take people in different ways. And if we've been able to get that message across, then that's a success.
Thank you, Willie. And then just to Martin.
My last job before I was diagnosed, I actually worked in a dementia daycare centre. And A, they didn't even know I had dementia. And B, when I told them what I had, even the care managers were saying, "You what? You don't have dementia, you don't look it." So I knew that the professionals didn't know stuff and take with us, because we were only trained on 2, and we were meant to be carers for God's sake, but we only knew about Alzheimer's and Lewy body. So I knew there was focused stuff what they needed.
Thank you, Martin. Irina, you've got a question.
Thank you, Rosie. Well, first of all, I would like to thank everybody because my husband, who I often call being emotionally constipated, actually got through the book crying as a result of losing his dad, my late father-in-law, 2 years ago to dementia, and he absolutely loved this book. So that's a message from him, from an orphan now. So yes, and I think it helped him to, because he was scared reading it. He said, "Oh, I don't understand anything about it. So just go and read it." Oh, it's for, because he's in manufacturing and he knows nothing about research. It's like, oh, why would I read a manuscript? But he actually loved it. But my question for you is potentially food for thoughts and the challenge. So having written this book and looking back, do you think that you would want to add something? And do you think it's a time for a second book or something, collaboration, something to do next?
I'm not sure if I want that question, Irina. I'm joking. And thank you for sharing that impact as well. I think that's really, really important for people to hear. Chris, do you want to come in there?
I would say just watch out, because that was episode 1. But don't tell Rosie that. I think it's important for people to realise that, or to know that there are over 200 different types of dementia, and only a handful are spoken about. And also for people to understand that there's not just the end stage of dementia, because you mentioned dementia and they automatically jump to end stage. But there's also a beginning and there's a middle. And thankfully, all of us here on the screen, we're still at the beginning stage of dementia. But I can remember when I had my diagnosis nearly 8 years ago now, reading a leaflet that said that the average lifespan of somebody living with vascular dementia was 5 years. And here I am 8 years later, and I'm still able to talk, I'm still able to communicate, I'm still able to partake in things like this. So always try and find out what stage of dementia that person is at. And it's quite a simple question, but I would rather people just say to me, how does your dementia affect you? Because it's not so much my memory, it's more cognitive things. If we weren't all on mute here and there was lots of background noises, my attention would be drawn to the noise and I'd be distracted from what I'm saying. I can't go into busy and loud environments because it's almost like it's an oversensitivity of my hearing. So yeah, we've got a lot more to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And we did, when we were writing this, we repeatedly went, that'll be book 2. We can only say so much at one time, but absolutely. David, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I don't think writing another book at this point in time would be necessarily the way forward, although I wouldn't rule it out. But for me, getting involved, it was, as Chris said, there are many different forms of dementia, and it affects people in many, many different ways. And what I was told when I asked the question was, we don't know, and everybody's different. And I was really annoyed that professionals were saying to me they didn't know. That's why we come to professionals. We want to know. And they said they didn't. And it's only now, after a couple of years and being involved with everybody else, that I realized why that was said. Because dementia in all its forms is so diverse that it's impossible to pin it down to any one simple thing. And for me, the next step is to get involved in more research and to open up research and to look at all the other areas and all the other reasons and causes, lifestyle, whatever, and try and find a way to make it easier in the future for people.
Thank you, David. And Willie, do you want to continue next?
Yeah, I don't think we're necessarily talking about writing another book, but I think everybody here is involved in different forms of what we might loosely term dementia activism, and different sorts of research, everything from looking at dance and dementia to brain health and how to evaluate the new centre in Aberdeen, which I'm involved in. You know, I suppose our central message and our central reason for getting involved with this project is the idea that we're not dead and dying. We're living beings with things to say, and that's a message we're really very keen to get across. That, you know, you can live as well as you can with living with dementia, and you can be active and have a stake in your own future.
Thank you very much, Willie. Is there another question around the group, or would you like me to throw one in, Jackie?
When you were going through the process of putting your experiences and your feelings into the book, did you find that quite a cathartic process? Did it, when you seen it in the book, did you look at it and think, oh, that actually helped me a bit? Did, you know, seeing it in black and white and being able to express that in word?
Thanks, Jackie. Winnie, do you want to come in there?
I would say most definitely for me, it made an awful difference. The fact that I could get my feelings out there. I wasn't very long after losing my husband when we actually started the book. It was only, I think it was 3 months before it that we had the first meeting. So the grief was very, very raw. And I found that by being with this group who were so full of empathy for everything that was going on with one another, as I said in the day of the book launch, we ended up like a band of brothers. And that was it. And Rory, of course, the cat. Can't forget Rory.
I know she is here.
Is she there?
She's sleeping behind me. She'll make an appearance. We all know that she likes to do a grand entrance at some point.
Yeah, you had to be part of it. But yes, it was very much a healing process.
Thank you, Winnie. Chris, do you want to add in some stuff there?
Yeah, I agree with what Winnie has just said about it being a healing process. And maybe is a different perception from caregivers as there is from people living with dementia. I think very often caregivers are left out of things. And I remember being told that, you know, I've been diagnosed with dementia, but it's not just me, it's all my family and my friends that have been diagnosed with dementia as well. And it's about involving people. And it's about, for me, I went through so many bad experiences trying to get a diagnosis in the first place. I decided that I would be a voice, that I could speak and I could say things from my perspective. And I can remember when I had my second diagnosis, the Lewy body dementia, and the consultant said to me, after looking at the scan and speaking to me and my symptoms, and she said, I think you may have Lewy body dementia. I said, well, do I or don't I? And she said, it can only be confirmed on autopsy. And I said, well, I'm not ready for that yet. So Lewy body dementia is apparently it's the second most common dementia, but it's the one that nobody's ever heard of. So it came as a bit of a shock to me. And after both diagnoses, I wasn't referred to any services. I wasn't given any information. It was a case of having to find out things for myself. And I speak to lots and lots of people, so I can be their voice as well. And I remember giving a talk one day and this lady said to me, thank you so much for telling my story. I said, I didn't tell your story. I said, I told my story. And she said, but mine's exactly the same. But I can't put into words what I want to say. And so you put into words my story. So thank you for telling my story. it gives me goosebumps when I think of that, you know. So those of us with voices, I think we should speak out.
Thank you, Chris. And I think it's so important that people can see and relate to your experiences. It's absolutely what we wanted to achieve there. Martin, I think it's you next.
Being weird as I am, during the writing and the book, and even up until last year, and that was 7 years after diagnosis, there was nothing on any MRI. So people, I was wanted to show by the book that you can tell from people's symptoms, because I say I live on Tatooine because I can see 2 moons every night and things like that. So kind of the neurologist knew I had PCA, but he had to kind of for his own record, I suppose, he had to find kind of chemical proof. We ended up getting a lumbar puncture, which showed it, but they say the MRI only showed up 7 years after the proper diagnosis. So I just wanted to show that if you look at the whole person and the symptoms, and that can usually hone down if they're not knowledgeable enough, it will hone down the type of dementia.
Thank you, Martin. I'm going to go to Myra just somewhere where your internet's maybe not so stable. So in case you get kicked out, Myra, I'll come to you with that same question in terms of the cathartic nature of writing the book, and then we'll go to David and Mac.
Yes, well, I found writing the book gave me some sort of closure, because I had a similar story to Chris. My husband had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and it took me 4 years of thorough researching, trying to reach out to everyone, because I knew he did not present like someone that I had read or had in my mind as Alzheimer's disease. And getting that second diagnosis was worse than the first diagnosis for me. And by that time, he was unaware of what was being said. And I had written several articles and I had them published. And someone came back from me as far as Australia and said, "You have written my story." It was such a rare dementia that I picked up a peer group from across the world, really. And we all had the same symptoms. We all had this. It was so similar. With each and every person that I spoke to, their partner, or they all had the same symptoms as my late husband did. And when we came to writing the book, I thought, you know, this is an opportunity for me to get people to realise there's a range of dementias out there, and you can't. The term umbrella, the umbrella term dementia is wrong. It is a medical condition. It's a terminal illness. There is no cure. There is some treatments for Alzheimer's. For the other dementias, there's very little treatments. But what we all need to do is realise that people can live well with this condition, as long as they don't have other other conditions that drag them down. But you can lead, and people need to know that you have to be very inclusive and include people and respect their rights and listen to what they have to say. So getting the opportunity to write the book was, for me, just a great thing, and I felt it was closure for me. I felt I've done my job, but I'm still hanging on there, supporting all my friends here.
You're doing a great job, Myra. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to come to David, then Mac, and also just say hello to Sue, who was also involved. So we'll come to you as well, Sue.
Hello.
Okay. Like Myra, it took me 2 years to have my wife's diagnosis confirmed, because the GP didn't think there was anything wrong with her. So as a caregiver, you are worried, you build up frustrations, you go through a lot of stress, a lot of emotions. And these emotions come to the surface in lots of different ways. It can be anger, it can be whatever. And I found that I didn't think about the book and writing for the book was cathartic in any way, because I wasn't interested in being saved. I wasn't interested in being cured of anything. All I know is that I went through a lot of stress, a lot of emotions, and yes, it was a release to a certain extent to get things off your chest. But what's more important is that I now want to keep on going and try and find other ways to help people and to try and get rid of this horrible disease that we have, you know. But anyway, that's about it.
Thank you, David. And I come to Mac.
Thank you. Most of the things that I wanted to say have already been said. Well, just for you, I would like to say that it's easy to stand in the crowd, but it takes courage to stand alone. And, you know, when we were doing this, we were writing the book, and we weren't alone. We were standing in the crowd. And that crowd bonded together in a manner that actually brought our hidden talent out. And I can't stress enough the fact that the platform and the way it was conducted did a lot for us to open up, hence come with that. And on the writing the book, I think that we should do it because and I wish there was a link there that you could press and actually watch the video of that person doing things so that you can relate to it and say, gosh, he's been diagnosed and he's doing so well. So therefore, I think we need to go a little bit deeper into it, maybe right in our time, not on Zoom, because that's what we were doing and you were doing all the hard work and whatever. And maybe if we did it at home, wrote it properly, and then it might follow how we want it to come across. Yeah, I'm for part 2, definitely.
Well, like I've coerced you all into saying lovely things. And this will be, as I say, this will be available online, and hopefully this will be another example of people with lived experience showing what you can do and talking about the things you've achieved, which I think is, as we know, very important at this time. So I just wanted, I'm not meaning to put you on the spot, but I wondered if you wanted to introduce yourself before I go to the next question. We're just going over how you found doing the book and anything you'd like to share.
Firstly, I want to apologise for being late. That's because I knew I was going to be late, and I did say in advance, but I'm really sorry. So I sort of missed everybody's contribution. I feel a bit of a fraud. I always did. I really was there, kind of bearing witness, and that's been the most, I suppose, profound experience because I'm slightly distanced from it personally, although I think my circumstances have changed and I've now got a relative who's suffering a great deal, and the family are suffering a great deal. And so I'm close to someone who, you know, a couple who are experiencing the disease, but really just bearing witness to the group itself and the resilience of the people who came to the group. I haven't heard anybody but Mac. What you said just now really moved me. So I don't want to take up any more time, but I just feel that I was privileged to be bearing witness to the process, and I think the book is really good.
Thank you, Sue. And you are very much not a fraud, but thank you very much for sharing that. And you reminded me to say that one of the things that Mac did at every meeting for me by the end of it was to share a quote that I would enjoy. And so I said at some point I would have to go back through the recordings and make a mini book of Mac's quotes, because they're fabulous. They're always a good quote, so I always appreciate those. Is there any questions from the screen? Leslie, Leslie hand up really quick there. And Rose, don't mind which of you goes first. It seemed to happen at the same time.
I've had a question, so Rose can go.
All right, we'll go to Rose first then.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Rose. I'm a PhD student at Edinburgh. and I have had the privilege of working with several members of this group, and I am reading your book right now and loving it. I was interested to know, and it's kind of slightly similar to Irina's question, but how did you decide what had to be in the book? And was there, if anything, that you kind of had to get rid of?
Would anyone like to take that question, or would you like me to take it? Oh, there's hands up. There we go. I mean, Martin, we'll come to you, and then we'll go to.
All I can say is I seem to remember a big discussion at the beginning, and it did change direction. But I'm sure you'll be better telling that bit than us, Rose.
I'm happy to share that bit. I'll go to Mac,
because I can't remember.
That's okay. That's not a problem. I'll go to Mac, and then I'll explain how it changed.
I think the experience that we had was how we were actually treated out there, generally. Because if I can just mention one of the stories, I've got a colleague who was at a cash point trying to take some money out, and he forgot his PIN, and he was frustrated. He was, the crowd behind him, people that were waiting, were rude to him, and that made me think that there is a need to educate people out there to be able to accommodate people with a condition. And that's what made me be aware of the fact. And when we started writing the book, all that was highlighted to me. And then I think it came across pretty well.
Thank you, Beck. Yeah, so some of the practical side was, in terms of editing, was that when we first proposed this book, we thought that the focus was going to be on different types of dementia, because we felt very passionate that wasn't really out there, that wasn't really available in terms of an accessible resource about different types of dementia. But actually, once everyone started, bonding and sharing their experiences, I think we saw a much bigger picture of how these shared experiences tell an important story in their own right. So the information about types of dementia became one chapter. And then the kind of core bits of conversations that we found just kept coming up and kept ticking away, that we went, actually that's the core message there. There is probably still plenty of content that I wouldn't even need to do more groups. We could probably get more content just from the page of the transcripts. But I think it was realizing, so that's how we started then thinking about stigma and not looking like you have dementia, thinking about that question, Chris, that you mentioned earlier about asking people how it affects them, bits around kind of the care experience. And then I felt it was really important to put some information about research and the different types of research, because a lot of people, when they think of, certainly as our network, is clinical trials, and that's a really important part of research, but it's showing that kind of range that people can be involved in. But there was lots of sending out bits of transcripts and saying, have I included the right thing here? Is this what you wanted to say? And everyone was fantastic about being willing to kind of shape whose voice is the loudest in certain bits, and yeah, so hopefully it's nicely balanced in the end. So yeah, I'm just checking, we've got time for a couple more questions, I think, and then if there's not any from around the room, I'll pick one from the list. So we talked about some questions that we think were important to discuss, and one of the things I know that has been raised already, I've just remembered Leslie had a question. Sorry, Leslie, ignore me. You go.
That's okay. Thank you. I just really wondered how your family and your friends have kind of responded to this journey that you've been on.
A lovely question. Willie, do you want to come in there?
Oh, my sons just go, "Oh, Dad, not that boring dementia stuff again." And actually, I rather like that, because I can get you can get a bit obsessed with your own disease, and with kind of getting involved with research and all the rest of it. And I think it's right and proper that we need to get on and live life. That isn't always dominated by dementia. So the first time they reacted like that, I was actually quite cross, because this stuff is important to me. But I think they're right. You know, I think they're right to remind me that life has got lots of other things in it and isn't just about this. I used to work as a journalist, and there kind of, I suppose, used to be an idea that I produce stuff, you know, that things are published, whether on radio or online or whatever, that I've been involved with. So that maybe wasn't such a big deal to them. But I like the fact that they keep me in my place.
Absolutely. Thank you, Willie. We'll go to David.
I think family reactions are a bit like dementia itself. Everyone is affected differently. And I have two sons, and they have their own way of grieving. And sometimes they show it, sometimes they don't. But their reaction to the book was that they only read my portion of it. They didn't want to know about other people, because that was part of their grieving process. Why should I worry about anybody else? I'm only interested in my mum and my dad. So that was their way of looking at it.
Thank you, David. And Martin, we'll come to you.
Yeah, it was more my brother and my sister, who I don't see very often. My brother's a far too highbrow academic, but he finally understood what it was like, because you could see it printed rather than me wittering away. My sister was good about it, but I'd like to come back to Willie's point about getting stuck in what I call the dementia silo. It is too easy to do so, and I make the deliberate effort not to. And it can be hard. You're lonely out there, but it needs to be done, because otherwise we will be self-excluding ourselves. So we need to get out there and show people that we can do normal things, like our trustee of charities and things like that. That kind of, we are just like everyone else. So don't treat us separately.
Thank you, Martin. Chris, I'll come to you.
My family are still in denial that I have dementia. My dad had Alzheimer's disease, and so did my grandmother. So my brother and sister saw how bad my dad was and how he deteriorated as time went by. And they both said to me, "You haven't got dementia." I go up the stairs and I forget what I've gone up there for. And I was living in Cardiff at that time, and I was living on my own, and I wasn't coping terribly well. So I ended up moving to Eastbourne, which is where my partner lived. And that was purely because my family didn't accept I had dementia. And that hurts, because if it was the other way around, I would not have abandoned them, and I would have stayed there to have looked after them. So I have sent them copies of the book, but I daren't ask if they've read it or not, because I'm sure if they had read it, they would have mentioned it to me. So I think it's sad that sometimes not only people diagnosed with dementia are in denial that they have dementia, but often family members are in denial that you have dementia as well. And I think partly my brother and sister now, they don't spend enough time with me to see how my dementia affects me. But yeah, my family are really in denial that I have dementia.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, it's really difficult, but also a really important point, isn't it? That, you know, sometimes we assume that if you're a big dementia activist, that people all around you are kind of on your journey with you on that one, and that's not always the case. Mac, I'll come to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it took me quite some time to tell my family about it. I was already, like I said earlier, I was recovering from major heart surgery, and I was living with my children, and they're all around me, looking after me and whatever. And I did not want to burden them with something else, you know, because we are so protective of our family, and it takes a lot to actually put something else on them. And I felt that I don't want to be a burden, even more so on them. But the thing that matters is like what Chris was saying, that because family have seen you, they're with you all the time, they're around you, and you protect them to that extent, and you don't show your feelings, you know, you don't express them, and you don't let them see you suffer inside, if you like, and therefore they automatically think that there's nothing wrong with you, you know. And that applies to all the friends and colleagues. I mean, prior to diagnosis, I had good quality of life. I was living fine. But now, living with it 10, 12 years later, I have life of good quality because I've gained so many friends. I've spoken to so many people. I've learned how people cope. I've picked up tips from them. And I can safely say that I have dementia, but dementia doesn't have me.
Thank you so much, Mac. Winnie, did you want to come in there?
My friends were, wow, you've helped to write a book. That's wonderful. My family, well, now that you got it out of your system, now will you forget about dementia and move on? Rosie knows I like quotes, but I think the quote for that is, a prophet is without honour in his own country. And that was just what it was like. They weren't interested that I had taken part in writing the book, or, you know, they just seemed to ignore it. I don't know, I've given them copies. I don't even know if they have read it. But my friends were very supportive. So it's just the way it goes.
Thank you, Winnie. And I think it shows, you know, it's really important, as we said, with what you were saying, Chris, about seeing how different people cope, and then how do we manage that and support people in the right way, knowing that they might not automatically have the support of people you might expect. Chris, did you want to come back in on that one?
Yes, please. I just wanted to say that somebody that I know couldn't get any of his family to listen to him about his dementia, how it affected him, again in denial that he had dementia. And so what he did a recording, and then he got all the family together in a room and asked them to play the recording. He wasn't there. And that was the first time that they listened to it. And they actually heard what he was saying, because again, maybe they were in denial, I don't know. But I thought that was a really good idea to record it and to get your family to sit down, and almost like a movie night, isn't it? Well, here's my movie, listen to this. So, and that worked very well for him. And then his family started talking to him about it. But I think, as Winnie was saying, I think there's protection on both sides. We try to protect our family. They try to protect us. But the reality of it is that we are living with dementia.
Thank you very much, Chris. And that is, I have not heard of that approach, taking that approach, but I think that's a really interesting way of, you know, almost separating yourself as well, which is a bit of self-preservation there too, isn't it? But that's a really interesting way of doing it. I'll come to you, Martin, and then I will ask one final question.
I still think that my mum and dad, even now, would probably question my diagnosis. They've been in their 90s, so they were kind of what you call old-fashioned, kind of very old-fashioned, actually. So they would only see dementia as the last bit. I still think they would see that. My son-in-law works on the rigs, so he's off 3 weeks off and 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. And it took him a couple of years to even think I had dementia. And I discussed it with Ethel, my wife, why he wasn't seeing it. Because when he's home every week, we do a quiz, and I always come top. And he's just, he can't have dementia, sort of thing. And it's because, I was putting on an act for him subconsciously. He didn't see that when he left, I would go back to my bedroom, which I often do, and lie down in the dark for an hour. But once I started doing that, and I wasn't doing it. I wasn't hiding it deliberately. But once he saw me doing that, he then quickly came to realise, I think.
Yeah, so the more people can see the version of you, the presentation mode. We all do it. We all have an element of presentation mode, and sometimes it's about being willing to switch that mode off slightly, and it's something that you all did as part of, you know, working on this together and sharing your experiences, was being willing to be vulnerable and share, you know, what it's like when you're overwhelmed or you need that space. I'm aware of the time, but I wanted to end it on a question that, Chris, you mentioned earlier on when we were talking about things we wanted to say, and I thought it'd be a really nice way to end the session on this question. But before I ask it, I just want to say another thank you for all of you for attending, and to the co-authors for sticking with me, not just in writing the book, but in all of the promotion of the book. And I think, you know, we can really be so proud of how far it's come. As I say, I don't think any of us could expect it to reach 10,000 downloads so quickly, let alone at all. So I think that's really exciting. But the question I thought would end on is, what gives you hope surrounding dementia? David.
I think I must go back to awareness. I think most people are not aware of dementia, the effects of dementia, the causes of dementia, and especially people in situations where you need their support within organisations. And I can give you a classic example. My wife had been diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, and she received a jury citation. So I wrote to the clerk of the court and said, look, my wife has dementia. She's not capable of taking part in jury duty. And this clerk wrote me a letter back and said, thank you very much. Your wife is excused, but we reserve the right to call her another time. Yeah, that is absolutely crazy, because these people obviously are not aware of what dementia is, and yet they're dealing with the public.
And hopefully that is improving. Willie, what about you? What gives you hope?
I spent Monday at the launch of the Scottish Meeting Centres Network in Dundee. Meeting centres are meeting places for people living with early stage dementia, or maybe even before diagnosis. And this was a room full of love and light and joy, and people living with dementia organising things for themselves together with allies. And I think there is a new spirit and a changed awareness of how we should be providing services, and that gives me hope. It would just be lovely if there was money to go along with it.
That would be lovely. I'm going to keep that little bit of clip where you're saying that we need the funding, Willie, and I can use that in the future. But part of why we wanted to ask this question is, as we'll all be familiar with, as we know, there's a lot of alternative imagery and videos around dementia at the moment, and so it's really important to provide that aspect of hope. And Winnie, do you want to come in there?
I think the thing that gives me most hope is the fact that it's so much in the public eye now. There's an awareness out there that there never was before. It's not getting put under the carpet the way it was. It was something you didn't talk about. It was a stigma. But now every time you lift a paper, there is something. Some of it is utterance, some of the things that they're saying, but an awful lot of it, you can see that the kernel of truth, and this is what they want to aim for. And there's also a lot of research going on, and that is a biggie for me.
Thank you very much, Winnie. And Chris, we'll come to you.
I think what's really important for all of us is that we have a sense of purpose in our lives, and that can give us hope. And I've done some work in a local hospice because that gave me hope, because I was giving back and I was doing something that I could do. And I'm just going to raise this, but I'm not going to answer it. But wondered what my friends here thought about the new Alzheimer's Society advertisement, because I think that's taken away a lot of hope for people.
Thank you, Chris. Would anyone like to do? I was expecting a thump of hands. Right, we'll start with Martin. And then we'll go to, I think Mac also threw his hand up.
Being me, I saw the problem. I saw a solution. And I'm actually having personal emails, not generic, with Kate Lee regarding the solution. So all I'll say is watch this space, because I'm discussing it with their executive after Easter. I don't see. Yeah, I no longer protest. I will try and find a solution rather than protest. But hopefully, they'll pay for what I want.
I mean, I'm looking for. We're going to definitely keep an eye on where it goes. Mac, did you want to come in there? I saw your hand go up and down. And then I'll go to Willie.
All I wanted to say was that, you know, hope is expectation. Hope is desire. Hope is a change that you want to happen. And it all has to be positive, because you can have a negative reaction on it, you know, because if you expect too much and it doesn't happen, that also can give you, get you low. But I think the thing to remember is that by doing what we did, I think we've proved that we have got disabilities, but we've retained some of our abilities. And those abilities have come across through the writing. And we hope that people that read it pick up on that and actually say, right, okay, this she or he has been living through hell, if you like, and he's recovered, he's living well, and he's proved that it is possible to live well with the right sort of support.
Thank you very much, Mac. Willie, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I've made my feelings about the Alzheimer's Society campaign known quite publicly on Twitter. I just think it's a disgrace and flies in the face of, well, apart from anything else, it flies in the face of their own guidelines. But it flies in the face of what we are all trying to do. And the best counter to it is us doing what we're doing.
Thank you, Willie. I completely agree. That's exactly how to counter these messages. Myra, did you want to come in there?
Yes, it came from a care perspective, and I really just do not know how they actually allowed that to proceed, because it was so depressing. And for me, who'd cared for my husband with a terrible, terrible dementia, you know, he did not have a period where he was just progressively getting ill. And never throughout that 10 years of caring for him did I ever feel what that advert portrayed to be. And it just left me depressed. It didn't give me any hope. And I think it should be retracted. I think it's wrong. It's the wrong message. And from a carer's perspective, I would never have allowed that to go on. And it's very disappointing that the Alzheimer's Society has let that happen.
Thank you, Myra.
I'm really disappointed. And that there is no hope with that. It was sad. It was sad, but you know, I lived through a caring experience. I never once did I think each stage, because you don't know the stages. You just move on, and you know, you just live for the day. And that's what should be coming up. You make the best of every day. You live for the day. You might have a good day, you might have a bad day, but you make the best of that day, and it gives you hope. I really think it should be retracted. It's wrong.
Thank you. I think it leads into a kind of, I suppose, a more general learning point really to think about in terms of what we do as partners in research, but where we go next with our many plans is thinking about in general how we educate the public about dementia, and whether it goes down a more kind of, I suppose, fear tactic route, or actually one that's more about as finding that hope and finding those moments, because I don't think, you know, I know you were well, and I know that nobody denies that there are difficulties and there are days that are going to be harder than others, And I think not being okay with these negative portrayals of dementia does not mean you don't believe that there are negative experiences. It's about, in that short space of time, how do we communicate what actually we'd hope that people who may be at risk of dementia, people who might be experiencing early symptoms, what they see and what helps them to understand what it could be like to be part of this group. Mac, I'll come to you, and then I'll wrap up, because I realise we've kept you on a wee bit longer, so apologies for that. But I'll let you be the final word there, Mac.
Yeah, I would just like to say that, you know, the old saying, you only live once. And I think it should be, you only die once, because that's what happens once. You live every day, and every day is different. And every day, every morning when I wake up, I say, thank God I'm alive. And to end on something, I would like, for your benefit once again, I would like to say that I think that the future depends on what we do today. And I think it's important that we do something, because if we don't do anything, we won't achieve anything. Thank you for listening.
That's a lovely way to end it, Mac. What a nice positive aspect of action and hope, which is very important. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining, and to the people that watch this afterwards, I hope you found it helpful. I hope you've all enjoyed having this chance to both celebrate what you've achieved, but also to share some extra messages, because as we know, there's so much we could say, and I think at the moment there's a real need to focus on, you know, how do we let people know about dementia and the different aspects that you all wanted to share. So thank you very much. Thank you for all coming together again. It's lovely to see you all, and I'm so proud to know you and to be part of this. I'm very, very privileged to have been allowed to hear these stories and be part of Join Your World. So thank you very much for taking me along for the ride. And I look forward to what we do next. Jackie, did you want to come in there before we go?
Yes. So